Hello, hello. Welcome to the Ask Ken show. And this is June 27th or June 26th, 2024. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hope everyone's having a great day. And welcome to the Ask Ken show. So I hope you're all doing well. This is the Ask Ken show. My name is Ken Lewicki of ChannelingInc.com. So if you want to know more about what I do, please go to my website, ChannelingInc.com. You can see it right there. And I do lots of cool stuff on channeling training and also spiritual development training. Teach you how to be animal communicators and also healers. And I can just go on and on and on. There's so many amazing things that I teach people to do with spirituality. And the reason why this is my passion is because I want people to be amazing with their spiritual life, and also because with spirituality you could do so many amazing things in really accelerating your life and just like doing crazy cool things. Think of like channeling like the foundation to all spirituality. Like if you think of it with channeling, you could check things like, you know, what to do with your relationships, or what to do with finances, or what to do with your career, what to do with your health, what to do with hobbies or passions, what, you know, any of these kinds of things that you could think of, you can use channeling for it. And that's why I'm so passionate about teaching people how to channel, because when you know how to channel your spirit guides and you know how to get guidance from them, you know who's around you at all times, and you know how to extract very detailed, specific information from them, then wow, look out. Like you could do the coolest things with that kind of information. So that's why I'm so passionate about what I do. And that's why I make my life's mission is to make this world a better place by teaching people how to channel and to empower you how to channel, to teach you how to do it. So when I'm not around, you could do it on your own and also do it at very, very advanced levels. Okay, let's get started. So the way that the Ask Ken show works is that if you're watching this, please just leave your name and say hi, leave a question, and I will channel that question live here on the Ask Ken show. Let's start with the first question is, when incarnating, do we have different entrance points where and when we can incarnate? So the answer is yes. So what happens is when we're in the astral realm and we're thinking about incarnating, we're choosing to incarnate. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that happens in that. I teach entire courses on this. It's called Your Soul's Blueprint, is the name of one of the courses that I teach. And what happens in the astral realm is we start to develop kind of like a plan, like a blueprint of a rough plan of what we want to do. And when we do this, we don't just do it alone as a soul. We work with mentors in our soul family. And usually these mentors are ascended masters. And these ascended masters help us develop our plan, what we want to do. So the power of knowing this is you could tap into this while you're incarnated. So whatever age you are now, like you may have not really known this before, but you could tap into like your soul right here, tap into your soul, feel into your soul, and ask it, what are my soul's purposes? And of course, there's a lot more to it than this, but that's a good start where to start. And you can actually figure out what your soul's blueprint is. And I call it a rough blueprint. And the reason why I call it a rough blueprint is because things are constantly changing and shifting, and it depends on free will, not just of you, but also of others. And then that free will can affect your path that you're going on your soul's blueprint for this lifetime. And so when we're in the astral realm, what we do is we're choosing and we're kind of contemplating where we want to incarnate, what part of the planet, what country, and who we want our parents to be. And yes, believe it or not, whether you like it or not, agree with it or not, you did choose your parents. So you did actually choose them. And also where you were going to be born in, like what country, what part of the world, what part of the planet. And so the cool thing about this is that this can be an empowering thing, going, okay, maybe I, don't not necessarily like one or both my parents or my siblings or something like that, but how can I make the best of it? How can I forgive them? How can I take this as a learning moment, a growth moment, an evolution moment, and really use it for the good? So the question is, do I have entrance points? And I call it more like an entrance window. It's not necessarily a point, but it's a window. So what can happen is like mom and dad, they have free will. And then let's say they're making love, having sex, whatever you want to call it, right? And when the sperm meets the egg, sometimes the sperm will take, sometimes it won't. Sometimes they might have sex, and sometimes the sperm might impregnate it, sometimes it won't. So there's kind of like a window of opportunity, a window of entrance point that your soul is like, okay, this is the time. And then it can choose to take that time, or it could choose to take another time. And it's a bit more complicated than that, but that's basically the gist of it. You kind of already have your parents sort of chosen that you want to take, but sometimes what can happen is that might not necessarily happen, or maybe they don't, hook up or get together when they might have, or maybe they decided not to go all the way. They just decided to go to second or third base, and then and then maybe a few months go by, maybe they split up, and then that doesn't happen. But then you may choose another set of parents, either in the same location or a different location, or maybe one of the parents is the same, but then they have another boyfriend or girlfriend at a later point, and that ends up being your other parent or parents. So it's a bit more complicated than that. So this is the Ask Ken show. If you have any questions about spirituality, please leave your name and I'll give a shout out. So say hi if you're watching this. I would love to say and where you're from, and your name and where you're from. So just type in your message, whatever platform you're on. And also if you have any questions about spirituality, ask those questions. And on the Ask Ken show, I will live channel the answers. Let's go to our next question. How can I heal my lineage without permission? Okay, so I teach a bunch of things to do with ancestry, your ancestral lineage, how to tap into it, how to do readings on your ancestral lineage, and also other ancestral readings I teach people how to do. That's in my advanced, like channeling level 3, my expert level. So the question though is how do I heal my lineage without permission? Because I've emphasized very strongly about permission in my workshops, like especially in level 2 when I start teaching people how to do readings for others, spirit guide readings, loved one readings, things like that. Permissions comes into play. It's very important. So when I'm doing healing on my own lineage, why don't I need permission? And here's the reason why, is because like your grandparents, for example, aren't alive, they're in soul form. So you don't really need to ask permission. They're already in the astral realm, and permission just doesn't apply in that circumstance. So what you can do is you can just go straight ahead, tap into your own lineage, either on your mother's side or your father's side, go up that lineage line or path. And then whenever you're feeling drawn to whoever it is, it could be, let's say your mother's side, I'm just picking an example, but let's say it's your great grandmother on your mother's side. You can go up to that lineage and you could heal that lineage so that it's passed down to you in a healthy way. It's really cool. It's really effective. It's a way of breaking generational patterns and unhealthy generational patterns that are passed down through the lineage. You can and not just patterns, but all sorts of things. You can work on healing all that, and then you can do the same thing up your father's lineage. You go up your father's lineage when you're being drawn up to your father's side, and when you're being drawn to stop. Could be your great grandparent on your father's side. Then when you're feeling to stop there, then that's when you would stop and do healing on that soul, that person in your lineage, so that affects your lineage going down. But the cool thing is this also affects your children and your grandchildren. Even if you're not doing healing on them directly, you're doing healing on yourself, which also heals your lineage. So there's a real cool experiment that scientists did where what they did is they took a petri dish. It took a swab of a patient. They took like a swab of their saliva. They put it into a petri dish. They took that petri dish and they put it in another room. So they're not even attached. Like the petri dish is literally in another room. And what they did is they did like massive healing on this person. And then when they analyzed the DNA in the petri dish a second time, like afterward, they realized that the DNA actually healed as well, even though that DNA in the petri dish is not attached to that person. It's in the other room. Pretty cool, right? But then what they did is they expanded the experiment and they said, okay, well, let's take a DNA swab of not only that person who's getting the healing, but then also the parent, one of their parents, put it in a petri dish, and then one of their children, and put the DNA of the children in one of the petri dish, and let's put all 3 petri dishes in another room. Again, it's not attached to the person. And then they would do healing on that person. And sure enough, all 3 petri dishes, all 3 DNAs in the petri dishes got healing, received healing. So don't ever underestimate the work that you're doing. The work that you're doing heals not only you, but your lineage upwards and your lineage downward. Whether you have children or not, it still does healing. Whether you have, whether you're in touch with your parents or not, it still does healing on them. So never underestimate the power of the healing work that you do. It does affect others. And also on that note, the healing work that you do does affect the collective. When you're healthier, the people around you are healthier. And when people do this on a mass scale and start doing their healing work, then the collective as a whole gets healthier and healthier. So this is obviously like make the main reason why you do your healing for yourself, but this is great benefit. Would you not agree? Like, how amazing is this that you actually do healing on the collective and also on your lineage in both directions? This is the Ask Ken Show. If you're watching, just give a shout out, say hi. I will say hi back. Your name, where you're from. I would love to hear from you. And also, if you have any questions, just put a question in the chat box there, and I will ask that question. Let's go to our next question, which is, how do I attract clients? Ooh, so this is like business 101. Okay, really simple. Do the work. Sometimes you might not want to do the work, which is basically social media presence, talking to people everywhere you go. Do whatever you have to do. Some people are like, well, I'm shy, or I don't like social media. It doesn't matter. Sometimes I don't like social media, but I just have to do it anyways. I run an online business, and start promoting yourself, putting up Facebook ads, creating content, really valuable content. Try to post every single day, no matter what. And if you think of it, like every single business page that started at zero, with nobody, no followers. So everyone, no matter where you are in your journey, even if you don't have a business page, start one up. Start a following on a social media. I try to be on all the platforms. Right now I'm streaming to all the platforms, all the major ones. And just start creating content, and you will build your following. There's a little bit of a strategy though, is you don't want to put out too many like advertisements too often. You do once in a while, but not like bombard people with every single post as an advertisement about your service or product or whatever it is. So there's a rule of thumb that I learned from a guy named Gary Vaynerchuk. And what Gary V, he suggests is that for every 9 posts that you put, the 10th one is like an advertisement. So 9 really good quality content. And if you're not sure what this is, just mix it up. Like sometimes it could just be a meme. Sometimes it could be doing a live thing. Sometimes it could be this, it could be that. But put out good, valuable content if you can. And then once in a while, throw out like, hey, by the way, I have this service that I offer. And then 9 more other content, good, valuable content. And then on the 10th one, oh, by the way, I have this event coming up. And another more content, or good, valuable content. And then on the 10th one, you're like, oh, by the way, I'm going to be at this Spirit Expo or whatever, stuff like that. So that's kind of the way that is pretty reasonable, but just keep doing it. Even when you don't think you're getting any traction, even when no one's commenting on your posts, just keep putting them up, and you'll eventually start to attract more followers, more customers, and you will build your following. And then everywhere, like I meet probably 100 new people a week, 100 new people at least a week. So, and I'm constant, like not every single one I'm telling about my services, but quite a few I am. And know what your elevator pitch is, like your 30-second elevator pitch. Be brief, quick, to the point, and make it like so good where people are like, oh, tell me more, or how can I book with you, right? That's how you want to make your elevator pitch. So let's go to the next question. And the next question is, how come someone can feel overwhelmed by crowds? What is going on spiritually? Okay, so this is a really good question. I would say about 95% of all my students who come to me are empaths. So just to give you some context, I would say about 1 in 10 people on this planet are empaths, but almost 95% that come to me are empaths, if that makes sense. And what an empath is somebody who's highly sensitive to people, places, things, environments, situations, circumstances. They can feel other people's energies really strong. It's not a bad thing. Being an empath, let me say this very, very clearly. Being an empath is a good thing. It's a superpower when you know how to use it as a superpower and you know how to harness it. Of course, you want to be healthy, a healthy empath. There's a difference between an unhealthy empath and a healthy empath. And one of the things that I recommend with all my students is that they continue going and attending, like, say, for example, my Ascension Group Healing, where they're constantly getting healing on a monthly basis. And then what that does is that helps them to heal their aspects. So what's going on when somebody feels overwhelmed in crowds on a spiritual level? Okay, so let's take aside this non-spiritual level for a moment. Is sometimes it could just be your own triggers. I find there's three kinds of people that need healing, and I know I've been all three of these, so I'm not putting anyone down, I'm not bashing one, but I've been all three of these. So the three typical kind of people that need lots of healing are people that are um, they get triggered really easy, people who trigger others really easily, and people who are super highly opinionated. That's, in my opinion, three people, and I've been all three of these. So I'm not putting in, like I said, I've been all these. I've worked on myself, and that's how I'm able to identify this. And so if you're any one of these three things, it's okay. Give yourself grace. Keep doing the healing work. And as you get healthier, you'll find that you're less of these. So the three are you get triggered easy, you trigger other people very easily, and you're very highly opinionated. So that could be one of the three things. And let's talk about the first one now. The first one is get triggered really easily. So what happens is there could be a couple things going on. Obviously, there could be a lot of things like inside that are you're unresolved, accumulated over the years and decades that you haven't figured out and or fully healed or not. Maybe just brand new to the healing journey, or maybe you've been working on it for years but haven't done the deep healing that is required. And that could be done with self-healing, but it could also be done with others, people who are competent and know what they're doing. They have channeling and they could actually check to make sure that what they're doing is actually working and go on the deep levels of healing that need to be done. And then you'll find that over the years and decades that those things that used to bother you, they just don't bother you anymore. Or if they were like an 8 or 9 out of 10, maybe they're like a 3 or 4 out of 10. And a 3 out of 4 out of 10 is way easier to manage than an 8 or 9 out of 10. Like, I know for me, like if it's a 8 or 9, I'm like just freaking out for sometimes days, if not weeks. And that's not a good, healthy place for me to be. But I found now through my healing journey that very few things trigger me to that extreme, and or even trigger me as frequently as they used to. So that's the real litmus test: is how often do you get upset? How often are your buttons pushed? How often do these things bother you, and to what level, what degree? And then I've noticed that my students who attend my monthly Ascension Group Healing on a monthly basis, that over a relatively short period of time, like let's say 6 months, within half a year, those things they tell me these are the testimonials that they tell me. They reach out and they say, hey Ken, those things that used to bother me, they just, this specific thing used to bother me, now it doesn't anymore, and this specific thing used to bother me and now that doesn't anymore. And that is the real litmus test. That shows how far you've come in your healing journey, those things that used to bother you. But let's go back to how come someone can feel overwhelmed in crowds? What's happening on a spiritual level? So we're made up of over 100 different components. I've been able to identify 100 different non-physical aspects of us that make us up as a human. And not only identify what these aspects are, but also how these aspects, like what their function is and how they work, and when they're not healthy, and then how to heal them and how to make them healthier. So then with the result of that is, let's say, for example, somebody goes to the mall, and if these aspects are unhealthy or not as healthy or healed as they could be, you could be taking in energies like crazy. They're just pouring in left, right, and center. And you're wondering why, like, you feel overwhelmed. And sometimes it's not you, like it's not. It's just your aspects aren't as healthy as they can be. So let's identify some of these aspects. The main one for sure by far is your auric field, your aura. So your aura is that part that surrounds you. And if your aura is like a sieve, if it has a whole bunch of holes in it, and the energies of other people and environments, like have you ever walked into an environment and it's like super thick, you could like feel the thickness in there and you're just like, ugh, right? That means you're an empath. Most people don't feel that. Like I said, about um, 1 in 10 people are empaths, which means 9 out of 10 are not. So if you're like those 1 out of 10, that means you're very sensitive to these kinds of things. And again, you can use this as a good thing, a positive thing. I'll get to that in a bit. But what happens is if you're an empath and your auric field is very permeable, meaning it lots of those energies and emotions can come in, then you're absorbing all that crap and you're just like, ew, right? Like, I got to get out of here. This is gross, disgusting, or overwhelming, and I just can't stand it or take it. So what I do with my students is a couple of things with their auric field. So your chakra system, your chakras, there's a direct correlation between your chakras, your chakra health, and your auric field. I'm not saying they're two separate components, okay? But so if your chakras aren't as healthy as they can be, or as strong and powerful as they can be, so sometimes they need upgrading or they need to be enhanced or really like lit up, so they're nice and bright and strong and healthy and flowing and clear and open and all that stuff. And each one is really, really healthy. Then that powers up your auric field, and that creates a good, healthy, powerful aura that you can have around you. Because without it, it's kind of like, thinking of it like a battery pack that's kind of like on its fritz, it's on the edges of ready to go, and it's kind of glitchy. It's that auric field is kind of like if you think of like those sci-fi movies where they have like the what do they call that, the protection field around, like the dome around the whatever it is they're trying to protect or whatever. And so if the power bank of that is glitchy and not as strong as it can be, hence your chakras, then it's going to affect your auric field. So I always, always, always make sure when I'm doing healing on somebody, I always check their chakras and make sure they're in good shape. And if they're not, I do what I need to do to heal them, clear them, make sure that they're flowing correctly, make sure that they're open, nice and wide, and that they're all connected. There's something I call the chakra string. It's actually a string that connects the different chakras to each other. You could call it a cord, but chords, often people think of chords as something else. So I just say the word chakra string instead. But make sure that that string is taut and your chakras are in alignment, all directions, and also nice and equal is what we want each one of our chakras to be. Then from there, I make sure that they're bright and powered up and nice and strong. Then what I do is I check the person's auric field, and there's a bunch of things that can happen with somebody's auric field. One is your auric field can be like, it can have holes in it, and it can also have tears in it. Those are the two most common things, holes and tears. So I make sure that I seal those holes and fix and heal those tears. And then also what I do, and this is probably the most important thing, is I make sure that the auric field is nice and thickened. So I thicken it up. Again, you want your auric field to be somewhat permeable. So you don't want it to be like too thick so that nothing comes in. That's not a healthy place to be either. That's too extreme. And the reason why is, have you ever you're like maybe sitting there minding your own business, but then you feel like somebody's watching you. You feel like there's eyes on you. And so what you do is you turn around, and sure enough, somebody is watching you. That's actually a good thing. You want that. That is a healthy thing. That is what keeps you safe. So if you're ever like walking down the street at night and you feel like there's somebody following you, you want to get that like sixth sense. You want to know that there's somebody following you and feel that that kind of that. But if your auric field is too thick and not permeable, then you're not going to feel that, because none of those energies will come in. So it's actually good for you to be somewhat permeable with your auric field. But most people that I come across are the opposite. They're way too permeable, way too much energies are coming in. They're like Swiss cheese, and then they wonder why they're getting overwhelmed and they can't stand crowds. They can't do this, they can't do that. They feel debilitated when they go into, the mall or events where there's lots of people and stuff like that. But eventually you want to get to a point where you can handle crowds. Because if you can't handle crowds, that means there's something going on. That's a tell. That's a sign that's saying, okay, I need more healing. There's something going on, probably with my chakras or my auric field or both. And then there's a few other aspects also that I check with my students, with my clients, to make sure that those aspects are healthy as well. But those of you that are empaths, put up your hand, Say yes, I'm an empath, and be proud of that, because it's actually the people that aren't empaths, and I'm not, please don't go there where, oh, I'm better than others because I'm an empath. Don't do that. That's ego stuff. We don't do that stuff anymore. Um, but you can do really, really, really cool things when you learn how to harness the power of being an empath, like the coolest stuff, because what you're doing is you're able to sense things on a level that most people aren't. Energies are coming in, and emotions are coming in, and other things are coming in, that you can pick up on those, where other people, they would just pass over them and they wouldn't even notice those subtleties. So I'm an empath, definitely, but I use that to positive in a positive way, not only with myself, but also with my clients, with the people that I'm around, my friends, my family, clients, things like that, because I can pick up on that. Like, have you ever like felt like, somebody is lying to you, even though like you're like, they say the right things, they sound like fine, but you're like, I don't know, is there something off about this person? It's probably because you're an empath and you're picking up that there's something off with this person. And that's a good thing. You want to be able to have those abilities. Okay, so harness being an empath. It's an awesome thing, and a highly sensitive person. All right, so welcome to the Ask Ken show. This is how it works, is what you do is you first of all say hi by writing your name and where you're from in the chat, and I will give you a shout out. And then what you also can do is write any questions that you have about spirituality in the chat box, and I will see those questions. Then I will ask those questions. I will live channel the answers, and we will see what comes up. So please say hi and also ask any spiritual questions. This is the Ask Ken show for June 27th, 2024. Woo woo. Awesome. Let's go to our next question. Is your soul can be held can your soul be held captive, and how can you free your soul? um, so there's a lot of theories around spirituality that aren't necessarily true. Um, so can your soul be held captive, and how can I set it free? So the answer is no. The short answer is no. It can't be held captive. But there are other things that can happen spiritually that are not necessarily of the light. And let me give you an example. One of those examples is what's called pinning. Pinning is where you actually have a soul or an entity or something like that that pins you down and holds you down, and then you can't move, and you're like pinned. And if you've ever had this happen before, so scientists, they call it sleep paralysis, and it can be sleep paralysis. So what sleep paralysis is on a scientific level, you can Google this. It's basically where scientists believe that what happens is your eyes wake up, your mind is alert, but your body hasn't caught up with it. And so your body can't move, but your mind is wide awake. And so you're trying to move, but you can't move. And they call that sleep paralysis. There is such a thing as sleep paralysis, so don't think it's all or nothing. However, there also is a thing called pinning, which is a spiritual thing. It has nothing to do with sleep paralysis. What pinning is, and the difference is where you actually have like an entity that's not of the light that literally holds you down and pins you down on your bed or wherever it is. Usually when you're sleeping, this has happened to me about half a dozen times, and I would wake up and I can't move, and I'm just like, "Ugh," and I could feel this like heavy darkness on top of me, like literally like suffocating me, and I can't move. And that's when I use what I call the expulsion command. That's a command that I've developed to basically expel anything that's not of the light. But oftentimes, like, I can't even move my lips because it's got like everything just like totally pinned down. And so I'll say it in my mind as many times as I have to, as strong as I can in my mind, until I can move my lips. And then I'll say it verbally out loud as many times as I can to expel that presence that's not of the light from me, from my vicinity, and get rid of it. It is an actual thing. Can my soul be held captive? So there's other things like curses and hexes and other things. Those aren't anything to do with necessarily your soul being held captive, although it may appear that way. That's not what's actually happening. And there's lots of different kinds of curses and hexes and things like that. And I do have the abilities to clear any of that kind of stuff that's not of the light. I work with a very specialized angel who helps me clear that kind of stuff, but it is very detrimental. Most people don't have it. So if you think you have it, you probably don't. You might though. but it can also happen from generational curse. It could be passed down through your lineage, but it could also be you may have had it happen in a past lifetime as well. So not necessarily like lineage coming down the DNA down your ancestry lines, but it could have also happened from past lives. So this happened to me. I just discovered it recently, and I did clear it, and yeah, it was pretty crazy, crazy stuff. So um, it's a pretty complex question. It would have to be on a case-by-case basis. And so if you're watching the Ask Ken show, please say hi and a shout out of where and I'll give you a shout out where you're from. So where you're from, your name, where you're from, and then any spiritual questions, any questions about spirituality. So I'd like to say hi to Roxanne. Roxanne, woo woo. Welcome, welcome from the Fairmont Hot Springs in British Columbia. Beautiful place. I'm so glad you could tune in today. And let's go to our next question is, should I connect with my soul on a regular basis? And the answer is yes. Please, 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 please do. Like I said earlier, there's over 100 different aspects that make us up as a human. Of all those aspects, and hear me when I say this, of all the aspects that make you up as a human, even the non-physical ones, your soul is the most important one by far. Your soul is the most important one. It's the one that comes with you from lifetime to lifetime. It's that part of you that when you die, it crosses over to the astral realm, goes back with your soul family until you choose to incarnate again. And it goes from lifetime. Like, it's very, very, very important. It contains like all the storage. It stores all the information about your lifetime, not just this lifetime, but also past lifetimes. It also has your soul's blueprint, why you're here, what you're meant to get out of this lifetime. Your soul is one of those really important aspects. So in case you're wondering, your soul resides like right here, right in the sternum area, right where your two rib bones meet at the bottom here of your rib cage. And your soul is quiet. It's not like your spirit guides or angels or any of those other kind of things like dragon, which I teach all that stuff, people how to channel all those things. But your soul is actually a very like subtle, so they call it the quiet whisper of the soul. And the reason why I'm lowering my voice, I'm doing this on purpose. If you're watching right now, like if you can actually witness what I'm doing, I'm actually feeling into my own soul right now in this moment. And if you're watching and you want to participate, sometimes I like to make these the Ask Ken show like interactive, because we learn best by doing. So you can go ahead and do this with me right now. Just feel into your soul. 3, 2, 1. Nice deep breath. And just feel into your soul in your sternum area of your body. And just feel like how does it feel? What's the description of it? How does it, what's the texture, the characteristics, the attributes of your soul right now as you feel into it? And then when you try to communicate with it, you'll realize that it's like this, it's quiet, it's what I call a quiet whisper of the soul. So it's not that part of you that's going to be like booming and screaming in your face. Your soul, it's not going to be like, yelling at you. It's not going to be really loud, but it's really, really, really important. Very, very important. That's why I suggest, please, on a regular daily basis, connect with your soul, ask how it's doing, find out what's going on with it. Sometimes it might need healing or consoling or whatever it might need, like some just like TLC, some love. And so what I do, and those of you who've taken my workshops, my full weekend certification workshops, you'll know that I live what I teach. And I do this every morning. I did it this morning. I did it yesterday morning. I'll do it tomorrow morning. I do it every morning. Very first thing I do when I wake up in the morning is I put my hands on my soul and I tell my soul, I love you. I love you so much. I love you. And I just keep saying this to my soul for the first few minutes of the day. And I feel the gratitude and the love for my soul and how much I love my soul. And then the second thing I do is I connect with my spirit guides. And I do this all before I get out of bed, all before I go to the washroom, all before I check my phone, all before I do anything. The most important thing, in my opinion, is self-love. Telling yourself I love you, really loving yourself. And that really helps with the self-healing and also just the self-care, and also like having all your aspects working together in unison and helping them all be healthy. But it starts with the soul. So please, 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 on a regular basis, I highly recommend trying your best to connect with your soul. I'm very careful because I got into I went kind of to the extreme at a few times in my journey of my personal development. I've been doing this for 20 years. And sometimes one of the traps that I would get into was I would have all these rituals and things that I would do in the morning, and there would be like 10, 20 things, and it would take me like an hour just before I start my day. And it became just what's the word called? I couldn't, unsustainable. That's the word, unsustainable. I couldn't sustain it over the long term. And so now I try to really streamline what I do. And the two most important things, in my opinion, for me to do every single morning is tell my soul I love you and connect with my spirit guides and then start my day. And that helps me to get started on a good foot, on a good starting, and connect. Another thing about connect with your soul is actually communicate with it. Ask it, why did you incarnate? Like, what's my soul's purpose? Why am I here? Why am I really here? And it's not just one reason, it's many reasons, right? It's many reasons why you're here, many reasons why your soul chose to incarnate. And find out, ask your soul. You can discover all these answers within. And it's beautiful, it's wonderful. And then, of course, you can connect with your spirit guides to help them, and they might be able to give you more glimpses and insights as to why you chose to incarnate. All right, let's go to the next question on the Ask Ken show. The next question is, if it's meant for you, it can't miss you. Can you miss it? So the answer is yes, you can miss it. So like there's this theory out there, if something's meant for you, it'll come to you. Not guaranteed. No, sorry. I would love to say it is. I know some of you might disagree with this. If let me give you an example. Sometimes in life, I might choose different paths. Let's say, for example, I was living in Edmonton in Canada, and I chose to move to Calgary. But what if I chose not to move to Calgary? What if I decided to stay in Edmonton? It's not necessarily good or bad. Like my spirit guides very strongly were suggesting that I move to Calgary. So I did move to Calgary at that time, and it was wonderful. It was great. A lot of amazing things happened. But if something's meant for me, it doesn't necessarily guarantee that it will come to me. Okay. And the reason why I say this is because you have this magical, amazing thing called free will. So if I chose not to go to Calgary and I stayed in Edmonton, I would be on a different path, like an actual different life path. And it's not necessarily good or bad, right or wrong. It just means that I would be on a different trajectory, a different path. So could the same thing happen while I was in Edmonton? It could, but maybe not. Or it might happen in a different capacity or in a different way. It might look different, or I might meet different people. It might evolve differently. I might have gone into broadcasting or different kind of paths that I could have chosen had I stayed in Edmonton. But I chose to follow my spirit guide's guidance and move to Calgary. And then so many amazing things happened while I was in Calgary that it was just phenomenal and amazing. So I always suggest to my students that you follow your spirit guide's guidance to the best of your ability all the time. But one of the most important things is acting promptly. Acting promptly. And what I mean by promptly is like immediately acting upon that. Because I call it immediate obedience. I know a lot of people don't like the word obedient, but basically is you're following their guidance, you're being obedient to your spirit guides, but immediately. It's kind of like your parent telling you when you're a child to clean your room, and you're like, yeah, I'll get to it. And then 2 weeks go by, 4 weeks go by, and you're like, still haven't done it. Obviously, they're going to be upset about that because you haven't done it immediately within reason. So you want to, whenever your spirit guides suggest something, try to do it, and not just try to do it, but try to do it right away. Try to do it ASAP as soon as you can. And if you don't do it right away, oftentimes those opportunities might miss you. They might pass you by. So are things guaranteed to come your way? If something is meant for you, will it automatically not necessarily, not if you don't take the right action steps to materialize it. There's a really good saying that I love, which is, you can't steer a ship that's not moving. God can't steer a ship that's not moving. So basically what that saying means to me is that if there's a ship in the port and it's just in the harbor and it's just sitting there, and you could change the router all you want, the direction of it, it's not going to change the direction of the ship. It's just going to move the router around. But you can only your spirit guides can only change the direction of your path if you're actually taking action and moving. When that boat is moving, then when you do change the rudder, it's going to turn one way or the other, which is a good thing. And your spirit guides can help you know when to choose to, navigate that path, do a little tweak here, a little change there, contact this person, start this new venture, do this and that. While you're moving, though, you want to keep the momentum going at all times. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a rare time once or twice in your life where you may need to just stop everything and just like clean slate, empty off all the stuff on your plate and reevaluate, and then just over time gradually put one or two things back on your plate. That's like when shit hits the fan and life falls apart. Those things happen like that. Hopefully that doesn't happen too many times in your life, but it's happened a few times in my life. But that's rare. For the most of you watching the Ask Ken show right now, you don't need to do that. Please don't do that. Just keep going, keep taking action. And I call it not just any kind of random action, but very intentional action, and action that gets results. Because a lot of times people are busy, but they don't actually get tangible, real world results. You can ask your spirit guides this, and please do. They want you to get real world results. They want you to get real life results. A lot of times we're busy, but we're not actually materializing anything. So ask yourself, what can I do today to move my business forward? What can I do today to move my dreams forward? What can I do today to keep me going on this path? What can I do today to do more healing work? What can I do today to foster my relationships? What can I do today to help me be a better parent? What can I do today to help me move my career forward, or whatever? What can I do today to help me with my health, to help me be a better healthy state? Right? And just keep asking your spirit guides for help on this. And then by doing that, that's going to help you materialize what you're really meant to do. And then those opportunities that come your way, they won't miss you, because you'll basically be bumping into them rather than waiting for them to bump into you. Now, they might bump into you from time to time, but if the boat is moving and you're taking action, you might bump into them in a good way. And then you want to bump into each other, and that's even better. Okay, so sometimes you need to take action. There's an example of this, what happened just maybe a couple months ago. This guy invited me. I didn't know him very well. I just met him, and he invited me to his birthday party. And I'm like, I don't really want to go. Like, I don't feel like it. Don't really know the guy that well. But I'm like, I checked with my guides, and they were very adamant. They're like, no, Ken, you need to go to this party. I'm like, okay, whatever, I'm going. So I went to this birthday party. It was at like a hotel, and there was a big restaurant there, and all these people I didn't know. And sure enough, I met this lady, and she was like, I know I needed to come here. I didn't want to come to this, but I know I needed to come here, and I knew it was for you, to meet you, so I could learn how to channel. And sure enough, she's become a client. She's taken my workshops. I'm like, oh, that's why I was meant to go to that party, right? Like, sometimes though, you just have to show up, and then those opportunities bump into you, or you bump into them, or you bump into each other. But that's the really cool magic that happens when you follow your spirit guides' guidance, which is why I'm so passionate about teaching people how to channel, because like that's just one of the gazillion examples I could give you on a weekly basis that happens when you follow your spirit guides' guidance, and you keep the momentum going, and then it's just so much fun. Welcome to the Ask Ken Show. If you're just tuning in, please visit my website at ChannelingInc.com. That's where you'll find all the magic. That's where you'll find all the trainings that I do on a regular basis, a monthly basis. I think I do like 10 to 12 events every month, quite a few. If you're watching this, please put your name in the chat box and where you're from, and I will give you a shout out. And if you have any questions about spirituality, please put it in the chat box, and I will live channel the answers. Let's go to our next question. The next question is, I don't feel confident. I don't feel confident. How can I help people? Do what you can with what you got with where you're at. So, okay. So I don't feel confident. How can I help people? So there's two things on that. One is I don't feel confident. So confidence is one of those elusive kind of, have you ever noticed that you can be really, really confident in one thing, but not in another? So careful when you use the word, I don't like confidence, because confidence, like for example, you put me on a skateboard, I'm not very confident on it until I practice enough, and then I get better at it, then I become confident. But it doesn't mean that doesn't, Like there's self-confidence, like how I feel just overall in general around people. Okay, that's different than you can be super confident in something that you're competent in, something that you're competent, you're skilled at, you've practiced, you've gotten really good at. It could be playing the flute, it could be knitting, crocheting, and you're confident at that one thing, but then you try to learn a new skill and you're not confident in it. That doesn't mean overall you're not confident. You're just not confident in that one skill yet. Okay, so one of the things, and there's lots of things I teach my students, but one of the many things I teach them is how to give spirit guide readings. Okay, so oftentimes my students come to me and they say, oh, like, because we practice it in the class, but they're like, I don't feel very confident to do this for the public, but I really want to because I want to help others and I want to make a big, profound impact in other people's lives, but I don't feel confident. Well, guess what? Like any skill, you have to do it enough times until you gain the confidence. You don't get the confidence and then do the skill. You do the action to gain the confidence. So it's kind of like a child like learning how to put blocks on top of each other. If you ever watch a toddler or like a 2 or 3 year old, what do? They're putting blocks on top. They're not confident at all, but they just keep trying. And then like most of the times at the beginning, the blocks won't stay up. They'll just keep falling over, but they keep trying, and keep trying, taking the action, taking the action, right? And then they become confident enough where the blocks start to stand. They're like, oh my God, look at that. And then they build off of that success. And we've all done this as children. We've all learned to tie our shoelaces. We may not have gotten it the very first few times, but eventually we do. It may have happened with when you're writing. I don't know about you, but when I was learning cursive writing in school, do the A like this, and then do the S, make sure you have the squiggle at the end and all that stuff, and the teacher would come around, and back in my day, they would they would use a ruler and smack your hand or whatever, if you didn't get it right. Yeah, yeah, things have changed a lot. But you do the action over time, and then now most of us, we can write, sentences and paragraphs and even essays using a pen, whereas we had to learn that. So we had to do the action though to gain the confidence. And this is really important. So when it comes to channeling, as you're practicing, please, please, please just keep practicing. Don't give up 5 minutes before the miracle happens. If you're practicing right now, you've learned some basic skills. If you haven't and you want to take my workshops, please do. I have introductory classes. I have full certification workshops. I do one-on-ones. You name it, I'll teach you this stuff. I'll walk you through it so you can get the basics, get the foundation, and then practice it in between the classes. And then after the classes, practice after the classes, and start to utilize it in your everyday life to really enhance your intuition and enhance your spiritual abilities. And there's infinite things and possibilities you can do with channeling. So I hope that helps. Please, please, please take action. That's the most important thing. I cannot overemphasize that. Do animals have auric fields? Ooh, I love this question. So I do teach animal communication, and what we're talking about is living animals, and the answer is yes. Living pets and animals. So if you do have a pet, or someone who has a pet, whether it's a family member or a friend, I want you to try this. Next time you see your pet or another person's pet, is close your eyes and psychically scan them and feel their auric field. Or what you can do is, we all have auric fields, is put your hand close to that pet and see if you can physically feel the auric field of that pet. It's super, super cool. So just like I talked about earlier in the Ask Ken show, this episode, as I talked about your auric field in quite depth, quite detail, and humans obviously have auric fields, so you're welcome to feel other people's auric fields and also feel your own. You can do this. This is Reiki 101. Even if you don't have Reiki training, you can still feel people's auric fields. But try this with pets. Like, it's really cool. But if you want to play with this, try and notice the difference between your pet's auric field and a human's auric field. They're totally different. They're completely different. And then if you want to have more fun, is try it between different pets and see if you can notice the auric fields of different pets. And then, of course, through a bunch of healing modalities that I teach in my certification, animal communication certification workshop, I also teach animal healing. and you can learn actually like healing modalities on how to heal animals. And if you notice that their auric field of the animal is not as healthy as it can be, then you can do healing on their auric field, which is really cool. So if you have multiple pets, feel the different auric fields, and you may notice that one or more of those pets may actually need auric field healing. So please feel free to do auric field healing. There's two ways to do auric field healing, and I use both. One is energy healing. So energy healing is like a Reiki, bioenergy, pranic healing, all sorts of, there's a gazillion different kinds of energy healing modalities out there. I use them, and also very advanced energy healing trainings. And I also teach my students how to do energy healing training. And then also another way to do healing on one's auric field is through psychic healing, where you can psychically heal any tears, any holes, things like that in their auric field, so that it's nice and sealed, and also thicken it up. And sometimes, I never mentioned this earlier, but I'll mention it now, is sometimes sometimes we need spiritual upgrades. And spiritual upgrades can look different in many different forms. They can be, they could come in like activations. They can come in enhancements, where you enhance those aspects. But they could also come in, most likely for auric field upgrades, they will come in the form of an attunement. And an attunement, there's a gazillion different kinds of attunements that do a gazillion different types of things. But oftentimes when I'm doing healing on a client, I will give them attunements that will help them specifically enhance their chakra system, and also enhance their auric field, and also enhance their other aspects of them that need upgrading, as well as healing and clearing. So they need healing and clearing, plus they need upgrades. Both can be super important, which is why I recommend try to do both healing and clearing and spiritual upgrades along the way, because then, wow, look out, world. Like, you know, when you have somebody who's like being upgraded on a regular basis, like really, really cool things can happen as they're getting healthier and getting cleared and healed along the way. Like, it's just so phenomenal, which is why I do both. So do animals have auric fields? The answer is yes. They have a lot more than, do they have as many non-physical aspects as humans? No, but they do have quite a few. And a lot of those aspects are very similar. And just like organs of a person's body, if the organs aren't working as optimally as they can be, it can affect the system as a whole. So on a non-physical, on a spiritual level, when we're looking at spiritual aspects of a animal, we want to make sure that the animal's non-physical aspects are healthy as well. So if you've ever taken like, usually not level 1 Reiki, but like more advanced Reiki training, if the teacher covers this curriculum, this topic, they will teach you that you can actually do healing on the chakras of an animal. And when you do that, you'll notice that the chakras of an animal are completely different than the chakras of a human. So try it, experiment with it, play with it. These are all topics that I cover at very, very, very advanced levels in my animal healing and communication certification workshop. That's a 2-day intensive workshop that I teach. Okay, so if you're watching the Ask Ken show, please say hi. Give me, write in the chat group where your name and where you're from, and I will give you a shout out. Plus, if you have any questions to do with spirituality, please just type in the question and I will live channel the answers. Let's go to our next question. And also, please feel free to check out my website, ChannelingInc.com. That's where you'll find all these workshops that I'm talking about. So I have an intro animal communication workshops, plus intro channeling workshops, and of course my level 1 certification workshops, which gets you on the path. It's a prerequisite for the other levels of workshops where I teach my really, really advanced trainings. And then after that, I have like my 6-month strategic channeling program, and then my master channeling mastermind classes. And that's really, 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 really advanced trainings, which is tons of fun. Oh my God, spirituality is so fun. All right. Can grounding too much take me away from raising my vibration to channel? So can I overground, basically? Can I be overly grounded? Can I ground myself too much? And the answer is no. You can never overground. And this is one of the things I'm very confident about saying to my students, to my audience. You can never overground. Please try to ground yourself lots. There's a couple things to do with grounding. So grounding, think of it like a kite. The stronger the kite is grounded, the higher it can fly. The same thing with spirituality. The stronger you're grounded, the higher you can fly, the higher levels you can reach. So you want to be grounded. And there's a couple ways to do this. The two ways that I suggest my students ground, and not a lot of people know that there's these two ways. Please try to do both. Celebration. So the two ways, one way is to imagine like a root coming out of your root chakra, going deep, deep, deep down into the center of the earth, wrapping around the center of the core of the earth, and then make that cord nice and taut, nice and tight. Okay, make sure it's nice and tight. So that's one way to ground. And if you're listening to this, try this right now. Like again, I try to get my students to do this live. The best time to do something usually is in the moment. So if you're watching this, do it now. Okay, so ground yourself that way. Imagine like a root cord coming out of your root chakra, out of your perineum, going deep, deep down into the center of the earth, wrapping around the center of the core of the earth, make it nice and taut. Okay, the second way that you can ground is imagine roots coming out of your feet. And imagine those roots anchoring deep, deep, deep down into the ground, and then anchoring yourself into the ground. Okay, so there's a couple things that can happen with grounding. One is that sometimes it's not too common, but sometimes there's some of my students who come to me and they're not grounded at all. Sometimes their root chakra is just doesn't have the capacity or the infrastructure in place to ground properly, and they have that cord go deep down into there, so they can't ground through their root. Sometimes other students come to me and they don't have the infrastructure in place to ground through their feet. So what do? I do healing, clearing, and I give them the ability to ground either through their root or through their feet so they can ground properly. This used to happen to me where people would be like, because I was so untethered as a kid, ungrounded, that I wasn't able to ground no matter how much I tried. And I would try and I'd try and I'd try and I'd try. And then when I got into spirituality and people, kept telling me, oh, Ken, just ground yourself, ground yourself, ground yourself. I'm like, okay. And I tried like really hard to do it, but I just couldn't do it. And it wasn't until I went to a healer and they're like, oh, no wonder you can't ground is because you don't have the infrastructure in place. Let me give you that. Let me help you with that. And then once they gave me that infrastructure in place, then I was able to really ground and root myself. And that's now what I do with my students is those of you that don't have the infrastructure, I'll assess that, check that, ground you, and give you the infrastructure. So there's that part of it. It could be either through your root chakra or the roots coming out of your feet. It could be either one of those, or it could be both. It's very rare that it's both, but that could happen. So there's another thing that could also be at play here, and that is that your root, your grounding, doesn't have enough capacity. So this happens quite frequently with my students, where what happens is they're growing and they're evolving in amazing ways, and that's good over the last 5-10 years, and they're doing great, they're doing good. But what happens is their grounding is here, but then they're evolving, and they're here, and they outgrow their grounding, and then they become untethered, and they're wondering why they're struggling so much to stay grounded and also to keep on this evolutionary path and to keep on this healing journey and their spiritual growth is because their grounding isn't adequate enough. It used to be 5-10 years ago, but it's not anymore. So what I will do is I will give their grounding a spiritual upgrade. I will upgrade their grounding to raise that capacity so they're here now, and now they have room to grow into their grounding over the next few years. And then a few years go by, and then I have to upgrade their grounding again and their capacity, and so they can continue growing into and evolving. So, and it's not just with grounding. There's many aspects that oftentimes need a spiritual upgrade because you've outgrown that aspect and you've outgrown it, so it needs a spiritual upgrade so you can grow into it more. And sometimes there's something what I call like the limiting factor. There's one aspect of you, or maybe a few aspects of you, that's limiting the rest of the aspects of growing beyond what you can. So you're kind of hitting that ceiling, hitting that peak, and you can't grow anymore because those other aspects are hindering your growth. And so that's why I'm really passionate about not just doing healing and clearing on people, but also giving them spiritual upgrades along the way as necessary so that they can really, their growth isn't just kind of like this and trudging along. I want their growth to be like this, really accelerate their growth, really accentuate it, and really take off once and for all, and have you manifest and create the life of your dreams, and not just one area of your life, but all the areas of your life, and really prosper, not just survive, but prosper and thrive in all the areas of your life. So this is the Ask Ken Show. My name is Ken Lewicki. I'm honored to be a part of your life, a part of your journey. If you have any questions and you have any comments, if you would like to join any of my classes, my workshops, please visit ChannelingInc.com. That's where you will find all the registration. You can register for any of these kinds of things. And I also do Ascension Group Healing on a monthly basis, where I do a lot of this healing. Check my website for the upcoming dates, and also check my website for the upcoming intro channeling workshops and anything else that I offer on a regular monthly basis. Have a great day, everyone. Talk to you soon. And spirituality is meant to be fun, so have fun with it. And I love you all. We'll talk later.